Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Martin Sibley Show. On a bit of a roll this year, we've got a couple of episodes in the bag, and it's been great to get back to podcasting. And I mean, as you know, the whole sort of my background mission, the Purple Power newsletter, it is all about disability inclusion. But I think I'm trying to incorporate a lot of different disciplines, because I actually think for disability inclusion to become more of a reality, it's about having lots of different philosophies and inputs. But very, very specifically, I think my personal development journey has been something that I'm always keen to share, because I feel that personal accountability, individual influence that we can all have is really important. And so whilst all the different people I've been chatting to, different tools I've been sharing, you know, everyone watching, listening is going to have their own take. I just really love sharing what I've been experiencing, getting up to in life. And what a perfect moment to bring in my coach, David Brown, and someone I've known for many years, and we'll get in a bit to how we've met and how we've ended up doing the coaching together through the conversation. But firstly, great to have you on the show, David.
And absolutely wonderful to be here. And I really love how you bring this conversation of inclusion in, and although it's around disability, there is, for me anyway, what I hear in what you share is this much larger context of, you know, being inclusive and of everyone and everything that people have to bring. And I think that that's a really important message.
Yeah, so that part of inclusion, of disability inclusion, literally means everybody, doesn't it? And there's so many facets and elements to one pick in many, many, many ways. But I think, yeah, obviously our chat today, we're going to be meandering around various topics, as we tend to in our coaching sessions, and we tend to when we meet up in St. Ives and have a catch up for a coffee in the tap room as well, socially. Yeah. So I'm excited where it takes us as a general, you know, let's see where it goes, the element to it. But yeah, I mean, it'd be great for people just to hear a bit of an intro, David, if you don't mind, a bit about you and kind of, I suppose, like the coaching, like what kind of coach, what got you into coaching. I think that'd be a nice way to set the scene for people anyway.
Okay. How did I get into coaching? I've always had a fascination for how things work. And I don't mean the kind of the mechanics of, you know, your boiler or your car engine or your motorbike, but much more about how people work and how the world works, how the universe works. So there's a kind of a sort of a psychological, spiritual, emotional, physical aspect to all the things that I find really, really interesting. And like my personal journey has really been a lot about integrating all of myself, so that rather than living life really unconsciously, to shed light on some of that stuff, so that I feel more whole and I feel more present, so I can be more present to myself and more present to the people that I share my life with, including my partner and my son and my clients and family and friends. So over the last sort of 50 odd years, I've gone on this journey of becoming more and more and more integrated. And I've always been whole, like everybody is whole, but as I've become more aware of that wholeness, that what I've experienced is a kind of a settling into myself, a kind of an acceptance of who I am and what I bring. And sort of, so rather than just settling for that, it actually gives me the freedom to be able to expand and do more and be more. And for me, that's really incredibly exciting. So the reason I do coaching is to help people do that. And it really feels like that's work that's well worth doing and bringing to the world.
Yeah, well, an amazing explanation, and it, as always, resonates on a lot of levels for me. And I think there's going to be things you and I have spoke about in this podcast that we both have chatted, but I want to tease out, I guess, a lot of those rich conversations we've had for others to engage in. And, you know, some will hopefully be inspired and entertained and all that good stuff. But I think it will also move things in some people, and maybe they'll be looking to sort of rethink about some stuff or take new actions for themselves. But beyond whatever the effects are of what we shared today, mine and your big aim is to just try and bring out some of the things we've discussed over the last couple of years. And when you were talking then, it was like looking back on my journey was how I've always felt quite aware of that need to be present and the wholeness and some of those kind of key words that we can like really dig into a bit more today. But how many times have I said to you that I understood it? I'd read the book and I'd watched the documentary and I got the t-shirt on this sort of intellectual level for, most of my adult life. A lot of the things you were just speaking to made sense to me. But the last sort of 2-3 years, it's sort of through various, life happenings along the way, but it's kind of forced me to actually feel what it means to, so the words you were using, like to really feel present and to really feel wholeness, is a very different experience from another book that kind of we're doing a bit more personal development and got another certificate and another gold star because we did another course, and I think that's one thing I was keen to share, is that sort of for me, like 20 years of almost attaining, like getting more knowledge was this goal to feel more empowered and to then live a more fulfilled life. And it was a bit like being missold the dream that not only did I acquire more knowledge, I also was traveling more and business was getting better and all those like tick boxes of life were, kind of becoming more, achieving what I'd been aiming for a long time. And yet it wasn't unicorns and rainbows at the other end. If anything, it started to, health kind of went downhill and felt less happy as a result of all those things that were meant to be the dream coming true. So I don't know if any of that resonates for you on a personal level. I'm sure it does on a coaching level with your clients. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts around that sentiment.
Yeah, I love what you're sharing, and it speaks a lot to my experience too, and certainly to lots of clients that I've worked with and people that I speak to. So for about 4 or 5 years, I had counseling with a really, really wonderful man in his 80s. And it's really important for younger men to have mentoring from older men. That I think is essential for men's development. And I should imagine that for women, it's the same, to have guidance and mentoring from older women so that they can really appreciate the wisdom that these older people have, and to begin to evolve and mature into that version of themselves, in their own way.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this person would say to me is that lots of people have intellectual maturity, but often what people lack is emotional maturity. And that there's often a big gap between those two. And so we know a lot of stuff and we can talk to a lot of stuff, but we don't necessarily have the experience, the embodied experience, the emotional experience, the feelings and sensations that come with really knowing something in your experience rather than just knowing about it. Yeah. And my journey with him over 4 or 5 years was to kind of get my emotional maturity to catch up. Right. And so, I still read books. I still find, personal development, growth books really interesting.
It's not binary, right? Not one or the other. Yeah,
exactly. But that it's really important that for me that I have an experience of what that is, not just an intellectual understanding of it. So that means that we have to come back to the body. And the more you invest in just intellectual knowledge and being in your head, it's almost like the more top heavy you become.
Yeah.
Then eventually you're going to get so heavy up here that you're just going to fall over,
Yeah.
which is a somewhat comical way of sharing a little bit what you experienced,
Yeah.
I would imagine. And I certainly experienced that. You know,
Yeah.
I had to get divorced to do that. I had to have all kinds of health issues to have that, and financial issues to get to that point. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they have to get to that point where they're in so much discomfort and pain that they're like, okay, this isn't working. I need to find a different way of dealing with this, which is when they start reaching out for help, which for a lot of people, that's they think of that as a sign of weakness. But I would invite people to reframe that and to say, no, reaching out is a sign of strength, because it shows you that you don't know the answers, and you're being humble, and you're being open, and you're being receptive to the opportunity for your growth. And to have someone help you with that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that, because obviously I was speaking to the sort of accumulation of knowledge, but also the accumulation of experiences and the accumulation of success, and how that didn't bring the calm, tranquil contentness that you, or one, might imagine it could have done. And then, to speak to that point you made at the end, like for me, when I really came to you to do, to be able to support me and do the coaching we've done, it wasn't just because, oh, it's not the outcome of the dream I was imagining, but it was with bad health and with a bit like despondency of like, oh, what is going on? And when you said about top heavy and falling over, as you'll recollect, one of the main health challenges I had was going dizzy on calls, on work calls. And it was because I was so in my head. It was like literally, if I wasn't sat in my wheelchair with my seatbelt on, I probably would have toppled over. So that really was, not just metaphorical. It almost was a truism. And so, and also another thing you said there was that kind of, it's not a weakness to reach out for support or help. And the world is such a weird place lately of sort of contradictions and paradoxes and like opposite viewpoints. And there's all sorts of reasons and ways that we may or may not unpack that on the chat today. But one of the things that's got more positive airtime is mental health. Like there's a lot of good, sort of news coverage and general public sentiment that, there's I've heard the word mental health epidemic, and that was before the pandemic situation, let alone post lockdowns and post pandemics, even more difficulties for people in different ways. So it's sort of interesting that we've got this better awareness and better sensitivity about people's mental health. And yet most people still on a personal level feel scared of admitting that they're not feeling how they want to feel. They're struggling with health, particularly mental health. And as you say, that sense of it being a weakness to seek help is, we can all go, yes, of course, that's the right thing to do, because there was an article on the BBC News the other day saying it. But to actually do that ourselves is still really hard. I don't know, again, if there's any sort of broad things resonating or thoughts of why that might be, but this sort of juxtaposition between a more positive public narrative, but it's actually really hard on an individual level to still seek that help and support.
Yeah. People make judgments, and their behaviours reflect those judgments. I think that's true. And I'm open to discuss it if it isn't true, but I think that that's true. So when people, and you'll know this from your coaching, it's like, I have this belief. So I like intellectually, I know that it's okay. Like I feel like I'm struggling with my mental health. Intellectually, I know I can speak out about it, but emotionally, I feel like I can't. There's something in my belief system that stops me from being able to be really open about that. Yeah. And so the invitation is to begin to unpick that belief. Yeah. And once you begin unpicking that belief, that belief loses its hold. So there's a lot of work that can be done, and it has to be done on an individual basis. Yeah. Where we begin to unpick our beliefs about mental health and about failure and about rejection and about making mistakes and about not getting things, things not being perfect, or being further down the path than we wanting to be further down the path than we really are.
Comparison. Yeah,
exactly. But all of that stuff comes with so many beliefs that are just ingrained from our parents and our teachers and the stuff that we've picked up over the years. And without us even realizing it, it really informs how we see the world and see ourselves and how we live our lives. So by taking the time within ourselves, and this is what the self-development journey really is, by unpicking that, we begin to free ourselves from a lot of that stuff that otherwise has us really bound up and locked up.
Yeah.
And with that then comes, the freedom to be able to go, okay, to ask for help, to speak openly about that you're struggling with X, Y, or Z. And all of that comes with that emotional maturity that I was speaking about earlier.
Yeah. And when you were speaking, then one thing that jumped out is that, so we all make judgments, and it's like, I think there still are beliefs internally about mental health for others, as in, like, if someone else expresses some, challenge of mental health, that there potentially is a bit of a deep-seated judgment on that person because of the culture scape, as a word I picked up over the years. But my broader thought was that we're maybe becoming better at judging people less negatively when they are admitting or acknowledging that there's a mental, I mean, such a broad catch-all as well, isn't it? Like it can cover so many things under mental health, but broadly speaking, whatever that might be, we're more accepting of that, which is fantastic. But it's almost a bit of that irony of we're probably more harshly judging of ourselves than we do others, which I know is something we definitely talked a lot about. So yeah, that just jumped out to me as well, of like, it's harder to help ourselves, but we are maybe became a bit more open and sensitive to being more comfortable and positive about mental health in a sort of societal perspective. But then, yeah, to my previous point, there probably are still some deep-seated beliefs that even affect how we truly feel about it on the macro level as well.
Yeah, and it's that macro level that really counts.
Yeah.
And I it's not my habit to quote the Bible. I'm not even going to quote it that well, but I think there's something in the Old Testament that Jesus is quoted as saying of, about judging somebody, and, pick the splinter out of your eye before you judge another. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the idea being, is that, you've got to do the work of the little work of getting that splinter out of your eye before you can really see somebody clearly.
Yeah.
Include yourself.
Yeah. And that, I think that's lovely that you and I already have, and we'll continue in this chat to share elements of our personal journey, because that's the main framework you have and I have, is our own experience. And then hopefully we can be more empathetic to others, even though every other experience will be different. There's like the splinter is more out of our eye when looking out at the world, right? And I think sort of moving towards maybe some of the kind of tools and the ways that coaching can help people through those sort of moments, I guess, in the end, you referenced things happened in your life that brought you to some sense of a crunch point of, okay, something needs to change a bit here, as did I. There were other things going on, and it was almost like we can try to ignore it, but in the end, you've got to deal with it, right? There's almost some conflict going on for a while, but when it's just so starkly, there's so much going on, you almost just don't have a choice but to really, really look at it. And I know that for me, that was the case, that I'd have happily not looked under the hood for longer if I could have got away with it, because it's messy under the hood and there's all sorts of general life baggage for everybody to sort through, and, you know, beliefs that served us in the past maybe don't serve us as well now, all that sort of good general intellectual stuff that most people would understand the words around. But yeah, to do the work is hard, and so it's not always like a fun, enjoyable, like, woohoo, I'm now dealing with these things going on under the surface. But
it's not sexy, is what you're saying. It
yeah,
really isn't very sexy.
exactly. It's definitely not sexy. But yeah, ultimately there's some sort of point. It doesn't come at a particular age or a particular reason or a particular moment of life. But I think, would you say most people have something like this at some point in life from your experience?
Oh, I don't think it happens to, I don't know if it happens to most people, but for those people that do the work, it usually happens when some kind of crisis happens.
Yeah.
So divorce, near-death experiences, death of loved ones, financial crisis, breakups, you know, all of that kind of, you know, having children, sometimes losing children, you know, there are all being made redundant. You know, there are so many catalysts, you know, where life just shifts you.
Yeah, and I think you get it, and I think maybe for people watching, listening, the relevance of this part was that, you know, it can happen in all sorts of ways, and thank you for referencing some of the many more probably that are out there. But I think it's just to give that awareness that my situation, your situation, won't be the same situation of everyone watching and listening. And yeah, maybe people don't ever experience it, or maybe it's earlier, maybe it's later. But if and when this sort of thing happens, I just want to be able to give value to people that are potentially maybe at the moment feeling something a bit similar. So from your experience and from coaching, what's the kind of next point? So there's a kind of an awareness that, like, okay, something's happened, I need to maybe look under the hood, as I've now created that metaphor. But what do you do next? You know, what for you, what's the next steps?
Well, again, that's also going to be different for different people.
Yeah.
Some people find religion. Some people join some kind of spiritual community. They start doing yoga or meditation or martial arts or something. Some people go to therapy. Some people go to coaching. Some people, I don't know. I've run out of things to what other things. But what there is usually is this kind of reaching out for some kind of a support towards someone who they think has the answer.
Yeah.
Or has some answers, offers some kind of structure or some kind of process or some kind of something that is going to offer them, they've got a pain point, and they think that person or that organization is going to relieve the pain. And that's essentially what that looks like. And in inverted commas, the bad ones, when people reach out to things that are bad, I think it's when those organizations or those people couch themselves as they have the answer, and you have to do what they say, and that's where that kind of like guru culture and, you know, that kind of thing can come in. Whereas my experience, and I do feel that I've been incredibly lucky in the people that I've gone to for leadership in this way, have always actually just turned the mirror around and gone, no, the answer is in you. And I can help you, as many people can help you, to find those answers within yourself. But the answer always lies within yourself. The answer never lies out there, ever. And that includes, you know, your significant others, as well as teachers and all of that sort of thing. So you end up if you go on that journey, you end up being really resourceful, really resilient within yourself.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're not going to reach out for other people for support, but ultimately, you know, the answer lies within yourself.
Yeah, fully agree. And I guess it was, yeah, I think again that was a nice framing of inverted comma sort of bad spaces and places for that, and more positive and appropriate places and spaces. I mean, because you mentioned earlier sort of it could be martial arts and spirituality. I know your personal story is that you were very involved in martial arts. So like I guess, yeah, it'd be nice just to speak to your personal experience of embodiment and the sort of martial arts background, and how that, I don't know if you would say it's become part, like it is within your coaching now, or any inspiration from that, or if it was more like consequential. But partly it would just be great to hear a little bit about the background you have in martial arts and the relevance to your coaching.
Yeah.
But
So
I then definitely want to move us into the sort of embodiment and archetype stuff at the core of your coaching as well.
okay, great. Thank you. So I've been really, really lucky with my martial arts teacher, who would want to remain anonymous because he has no interest in public attention.
Accolades.
Yeah. So, and the reason that I feel really blessed about with him is because to him, even now, and he's in his 70s now, martial arts has always been about cultivating the master within, is the way that he would speak to it. So what I said earlier about the answer is always inside yourself.
Yeah.
His words would be the master is within. So it's always pointing the mirror back to yourself and finding that. So the purpose of martial arts, what I understand from his teachings, is that you develop a confidence in yourself to be able to move forward in life, to you know, be really present, to be disciplined, to do what needs to be done in order for you to create the life and live the life that you want to create for yourself. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, all the physical stuff, you know, the blocks and the punches and the kicks, and they're just metaphors. They're just metaphors for you to test yourself against yourself. Mm-hmm. And to see where you are on your journey, you know. And you can't really fail. It's just a question of just staying on the path and cultivating the skills that you need to be able to be that version of yourself that you want to become.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and it is, and ultimately it isn't about violence, which is what a lot of people think martial arts is about. It's actually about love, and it's about compassion, and about empathy, and about really being present to yourself and being present to people, so that you can use it as a way of healing the world, not destroying the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of that teaching, without me expressly referring to it in my coaching, all of that is just woven into the coaching that I do. And the beautiful thing about the body is that you don't, back to what we were talking about with this intellectual maturity and emotional maturity, the thing about the body is that you can bypass your intellectual maturity and go straight for that emotional maturity, because it's in the body. Yeah. And so you're having a direct experience of what it feels like to take up space, to be confrontational, to you know, defend yourself and make sure that you are safe. All of those things, you have an embodied sense of that, an emotional sense of that, not just an intellectual sense of that. And that's just incredibly powerful when you take that off the mat, as the expression goes in martial arts. You take it off the mat and you take it into real life. And coaching and martial arts is all about real life.
Yeah. And where I, if I may bring that disability lens that you're speaking about, it, the sort of intellectual and emotional side, is having been in a wheelchair since I was 3, having always had my disability since birth, it's genetic, having always needed care support. And, you know, I still have an element of personal pride that I have an intellect. You know, I enjoyed my studies at uni, and I enjoy an intellectual banter, you know, here and there. Like, that's not now suddenly, from what I'm about to say, a negative or bad, but like I definitely had more focus on my intellect because I felt like, oh, well, that's compensating for my lack of physical strength. And and it was always sort of there under the surface a bit intuitively, but what you helped me to see is that I can do embodiment or be embodied, not even do it, right? We'll get into the doing and being later as well. But actually, yeah, that sort of emotional side that I was grasping but struggling to understand what it was I was looking for and how to access it. As you say, it's in the body we can access it, and whether I can, you know, run 100 meters like you say in Bolt, or get out of my wheelchair, neither of which I can do, I can still be more connected with my body. And that really, in the end, was the door that I finally could step through the last couple of years, which has shifted so much about being more present, less in my head, taking life as it comes, not trying to always overachieve, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah. Your power and my power come from the same source, which is presence.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how physically able we are compared to anybody else. The question is how present is Martin Sibley to this moment? And if he is fully present, well, he'll blow a hole in a wall, metaphorically speaking, right? Yeah. You don't need to be able to do anything physical, because presence is all that there is. Physical movement is just an expression of that presence. Yeah. Us doing this podcast episode is an expression of that presence. Yeah. And everything that we do is an expression of that presence or an absence of it.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying that, you're going back, can you feel it? There's this. Yeah. Okay.
Because there was a few times you would say, again, like, it's nice to just give some personal examples so people can really grasp onto, you know, what we are speaking to. And I do sit forward. I've got titanium rods in my back, so I can't like curve or bend my spine. My spine's straight, but because of my lack of core strength, I do kind of fall a bit forward, and my elbows on my tray table on my wheelchair help me to sit up. And so there's a disability related reasoning of why I slightly sit forward, but I now still feel that difference between me sitting forward because I'm not as present, and I'm just essentially in my head, and I'm, you know, the energy's not flowing through my body, to that little bit back where I get more breath into my chest and my lungs, into my diaphragm, and I, to your point, feel a lot more present. And, you know, I never noticed those things. And so to your point about the mirror, right, you helped to explain or show, but it was only when you got me to speak to and experience it did it become real for me, rather than you telling me a thing just like another book and another documentary, the intellectual thing. So yeah, that's been the last year, that's really truly landed, and it shifted so much. And of course, at the other point is like, you know, sometimes I slip out of it again. And also I sort of think about life before I was more aware of embodiment and being more embodied. There were still times 10 years, 20 years ago that I can recollect having been embodied in a very natural way, but it was never as, I wasn't aware of that, or it wasn't as intentional. But certainly as life threw more and more challenges, this is one of those powerful practices that can help you shift things quicker and easier. And so that sort of, it wasn't like the day I became embodied and then I was always embodied. It's sort of, it's a practice and it's an art as well. But yeah, it's been a phenomenal journey, and a big thank you for helping me support that through our coaching as well.
Thank you. And can I share a personal story?
I love that. Yes,
because this you won't know. And I know you always
we got an exclusive here, guys.
Exclusive here. Well, no, lots of people know about it, just you don't know about it. Because that's not appropriate to our relationship, but this is a different thing. So I have very limited strength and movement on the left side of my body. And the reason that I have that, or at least my understanding of the reason that I have that, is because I experienced some emotional trauma when I was very young. And my unconscious, intuitive response to that was to very much kind of shut down and contract the left side of my body to protect myself from further emotional pain. And back to this point around presence, is that lasted for so long. So that happened when I was about 7 years old, but that lasted for so long that essentially what I did was I lost awareness and presence of a lot of the left side of my body. So I stopped using that side of my body, and because I stopped using it, I couldn't really use it that effectively. So I won't go into the details of how I ended up getting into this, but I went on a journey of bringing my awareness back into the left side of my body. Through some movement therapy called Rolfing, through another movement therapy referred to as the Feldenkrais method. And I am much more aware and much more present to the left side of my body. And although I still have limited movement and limited strength, because I think this journey is going to be quite a long one, if I ever get to full strength on my left side. But what I am is much more present. Now, what's been really interesting about that is since doing that work, I am much more willing to do this kind of thing and be able to do it comfortably and confidently. I'm much more willing to share my work with the world. I'm much more willing to take a stand for the things that are really important to me. I'm much more willing to be less concerned about what other people think and say what I feel that's important for me to say anyway. And there is such a clear relationship between doing that physical work on my left side and that kind of physical manifestation of my work into the world, that it's so clear to me that those things are related. And that's what I mean about presence. And we can, because of events that have happened in our lives, we can become much less present to ourselves. You know, and I'm sure disability of all kinds can lead us into that place. And my invitation is to challenge that and to say, no, how can you still be present in your body even though you are experiencing that disability? And that's what I think the journey that you've been on.
Even when you know, we've touched on a bit on the martial arts, so I've had some of that before, but that essence of how you explain martial arts, and it's not about, you know, decking a load of mobsters in the back alley, you know, because you're being, of course, like self-defense, if that ever happened, would be quite handy, but the amount of times on a daily, you know, occurrence of those things is pretty minimal, and hopefully never. But it's to your point about martial arts is love, and it's, you know, that presence and all the things you said before. It shifted my own thing from like, okay, you know, I know I'm not going to have ever been a runner and a martial, I felt like I wouldn't have been a martial art expert because of those limitations with my disability. But it's sort of, partly seeing that there's so much I am and I can be, and that uniqueness in it as a general point, right? But then specifically to the body and the embodiment stuff we've done, it's like, as you say, it's inviting people of all different backgrounds, all different disabilities, how it can still be a really powerful way to access that sort of source and that energy and that authentic you, rather than trying to assimilate. We talk about this quite a lot in disability inclusion. It's exhausting when you keep trying to assimilate to the world. So instead of me, when people go, oh, I hardly see you as being in a wheelchair, and they mean it as a positive compliment, but it's actually, when you dig down, it's like, well, I am in a wheelchair, and that shouldn't be something that I should be overcoming or trying to hide. That's just a very part of my identity. And so I guess we're moving forward from that embodiment. You can step into your true self and not, again, repeating a bit what you said, but not worrying what everyone thinks and people pleasing, which we've talked a lot about in our coaching sessions. And just stepping out into your true self and being your true self. And I think that all starts from in the body, right?
It starts with presence and being in the body, and or being the body would perhaps even be a better way of saying that. Being present, essentially, that's what it is,
And it is. Sorry, David, go on.
And so many of those things in our psychology where we are no longer present. So, for example, as a young person, if you were really exuberant and your parents kept telling you to be quiet, and so you've become an adult who is actually quite quiet, well, it's like you, because of that training that you had as a child through your parents, you become unconscious of your exuberance. So you're very rarely exuberant, and if you are, you don't realize that you're being exuberant, right? So again, the process of not assimilation but integration is to begin to integrate that enthusiasm, or whatever it was. That's just one example, right?
Example.
There could be lots of things, right? But you integrate that enthusiasm, and so now it's a part of you. It always was. It's just that you weren't aware of it, and now you can bring your enthusiasm to the table at choice.
Yeah, agreed. So the other one we're going to touch on today, the sort of talking point, and I think just as a quick aside, I think like in any discussion and any sort of focus on topic, there are words and semantics that become important. Like, we're talking about embodiment and presence, and some people, they'll get that and it'll resonate, and some people might still be kind of grasping with the word. But I think the most important thing for people watching and listening is don't get hung up on the semantics, but it's the intention and the meaning behind and around it. And I think that's just something I wanted to broaden. I felt compelled to share that I think sometimes you and I, I've read some fascinating books and gone deep dive in all sorts of podcasts. And so the last year or two, feel very comfortable, as of course you do as well, with the certain words. But I just wanted to make that point. If anyone's feeling a bit lost with the wording, don't worry. Don't be put off by semantics. Just go with the meaning and the intention. And moving forward, the next word is archetypes, right? So one of my PAs, Aga, was like, I was saying we were going to be talking, and she knows like bits and bobs about what we've chatted over the last year or two, but she's like, I still don't understand what an archetype is. And I was sort of trying to explain it, and I know I get it, but I still struggle to explain it. So would you mind giving it your best shot, David?
Drum roll.
Yes. what
Okay.
are obviously what are archetypes, but then feel free to carry on flowing into way you've ventured into archetypes and what the power of archetypes can be.
Great. So archetypes are they're like themes that appear across cultures and throughout time. So it doesn't matter what culture you look at whatever time in history, there will always be some form of king or queen. There will always be warriors. There will always be magicians. There will always be healers. There will always be medicine men. There will always be those sorts of people in the world, right?
Yeah.
And and they'll look different from one culture to another, and they'll look different at different time points in human history. But in essence, the essence of them, the energy of them is very, very similar, right? And the essence of those things is an archetype, right? So a CEO is archetypally is probably like a king or a queen. Yeah, a nurse would be like a healer. A doctor would be like a healer, right? So these themes just kind of repeat throughout all the time, and so we can begin to identify them, right? And the reason that I like working with them is that sometimes people, to take it back to the kind of the thread of our conversation, sometimes people lose connection with that part of themselves, yeah, where they can't really inhabit their king or their queen. Yeah, they can't. So they can't if they find it hard to inhabit that thing where they take a stand for stuff, and that they're clear on their values and they have purpose and all of those kind of leadership qualities that you have in abundance, for example. But not everybody has access to that in themselves, right? Yeah. And one of the ways in which we can access that in ourselves is we can embody it. We can work with the shape and the sensations in our body. And when we do that, we bring presence to it. When we bring presence to it, we can access those qualities that before we weren't aware of. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like reverse engineering it.
Yeah.
And because the body you're not kind of intellectualizing it, you're having feelings and sensations of those things, and that goes very, very deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by accessing something universal, yeah, you can then feel it in a personal experience. Yeah. So you're going from something like macro, universal, impersonal, to something micro. This is my personal experience and flavor of this. And that's the bit that you need to and want to take away. Yeah. Yeah. So the archetypes work that I do, I work with 4 archetypes just to keep it really, really simple. Sovereign, that would include like the king and the queen, magician, warrior, and lover. There are lots of other archetypes depending on what models you look at. I just keep it with 4 because, in my opinion, you can fit all the other archetypes that are out there. You can fit them into one of those 4. Yeah. And sometimes there's a bit of crossover. And it just keeps it very simple because you can access that just by the way that you hold your body.
Yeah. Which comes back to embodiment as well, right?
Which comes back to embodiment, which comes back to presence, which comes back to experiencing what was once hard for you to access, or what you were disconnected from. And by embodying it, you now become connected to it. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that so well. And
never explained it that well, and that was really exciting because I've never said it that way before.
Yeah. And I mean, as we've spoke lots in the sessions, and I've had a couple of podcast you've done, and that was like, boom, nailed it. I love that. That was, yeah, fantastic. I think what came up for me was around a memory of a chat we had around the sort of needing stillness. So again, it's all part of the same thread, the same conversation. But in life, particularly this current sort of era of, you know, technology and fast-paced culture, and everyone feels quite frantic, there's not enough time, they're sort of chasing the tail, all that kind of stuff. And I think we know it deep down, but again, we don't have the stillness to feel it and realize it. You know, even if you kind of know it's there, you still don't bring it up to your conscious level. But ultimately, it's that paradox, that irony, that if and when we stop, at least slow down, and then all the sort of tools we've been talking about today, we access something that makes our life decisions and the way we want to live our daily life much easier and joyful and healthy. But the thing I've often heard when I've had chats with people is like, yeah, but I've not got time to be still and to do embodiment or to think about archetypes. And I guess ultimately what I'm trying to bring us here to is, for people that say there's not time, what do you generally say in that instant when you're coaching, and if you hear that general thing in terms of that paradox, but the longer term benefits of doing these practices?
Great question. We have this kind of habit, like being fast-paced in life is a habit. Our culture and society promotes it. So we all get kind of caught up in this. I've got to move on to the next thing. I've got to move on to the next thing. I've got to move on to the next thing. And mostly what I say to people is, yeah, do you want things to be different? If they say no, then like, great. If life's great for you, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, crack on. Yeah.
But if it isn't, if you do want things to be different, then my invitation is just try this thing of slowing down and just practice it for a bit and see what kind of impact it makes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, to turn on your computer in the morning and sit just quietly and think about your day and how you'd like to be in your day, rather than just getting on and being busy with what you might do while you're waiting for your computer to boot up. Yeah. Or, you know, when you sit in the car, before you turn it on, just take a minute or 30 seconds to just notice your breath, for example. Yeah. It doesn't have to be 15 hours of meditation. It doesn't have to be, 12 hours in the gym.
Well, that's the other problem, right? People presume it's going to be, they don't even think about how long, but their brain's going, that's going to take so long, I've not got that time. Exactly. You're saying could be 10 seconds,
could be.
In an initial sense, at least.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And the reason that I would say 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds is because what we need to begin with is we need buy-in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if people don't buy in, then they're not going to take it to the next level. Right. So take them to the first level, which is, let's see if it makes a difference. Does life feel more easeful, more joyful, more relaxed if you take those little moments to pause during the day?
Yeah.
And if it does, then are you interested in more?
Yeah. And I'm smiling because I've said to you on a few occasions, like, you have the patience of a saint, and you mentioned to me that's like the vocational, the occupational sort of skill in the end, right? Because I guess to one point, the answer is really simple. Like, not to then not do it justice, because the effects are very powerful, but that actual application is really, really simple.
Yeah.
And I remember
The number of people that have said to me, it can't be that simple. David, give me the complicated answer. I'm like, it is that simple. It really is that simple. And people are just like, oh my God. I mean, that's exactly what I was like. I'm like, it can't be that simple. It is.
Yeah. I remember you saying, when we first started, it was like, how can I build more pauses in my day? And I was like, 2 weeks later, we'd have a catch up, and I'll be like, well, David, it's really difficult because I'm running this company and then I've got all the other bits in my life, blah, 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 blah. And so like, there was that, my ego or whatever part of me was resisting it. And then, like, I guess a sort of, I kind of bringing some of this towards a close. There's a couple more points we can cover off. I'm just mindful of broad time, but it's sort of like, almost looking back on what we've covered, is that there may be a point for different people when they want to make a change because they're not living a life they feel they would want to, whatever that means, right? And so, like, my logical brain's going into problem solution mode, but at least the point is, we've set the first part of it is there may be a point where someone's looking for a different way, a different kind of, way of building a future life, right? And then there's various different ways people might go about that. But like, from your experience and my experience of the work we've done and all that good stuff, the tools like embodiment and understanding the archetypes are a way, a tool, a practice that can be amazing at shifting it. But then where I'm going against my logical brain is that it's not then done and dusted, everyone live happily ever after, and we all go off in the sunset like a Disney movie. It still is a lifelong pursuit of practice and, rebalancing, and always having that stillness, because in another year, another 5 years, life's changed again. And so you have to keep that. It's sort of searching for balance and equilibrium. But as we change and the world changed, it's not like we do it once and then wash our hands and it's all sorted. I was just like a broad point. I'd love to bring you in on there, those thoughts.
So this points back to, for me, this points back to the master within thing again, that the answers lie within yourself. So once you get to a point where you are in tune with yourself, I know a lot of people don't like that, but if you have the awareness, if you have the presence, then it's like you're able then to navigate your life because you're referring into yourself all the time. Yeah. So you can make the changes, like I have a whole breadth of practices and things that I do, and I don't do every single one of them every day. Some of it is just how I feel, some of it's about time, but I'm adapting to conditions all the time. Yeah. And it's easier to do that when you have when your awareness can be turned in. If you're always looking out, asking for the next person to tell you what you need to do next, then it's like you're wandering in the desert without a compass. You don't know where you're going. You're going to need a guide. The invitation is that you have that guide within yourself already. And you've lost connection with it. Totally. And there's one other point, because you used the word just in that little bit just before, you used the word resistance. I resist. And so that's another thing that we end up or I end up working a lot with people on is, you know, this internal resistance, this I can't do this and I can't do that, and it's really difficult, and you know, and you can see the tension in their bodies, and you know, and hear it in their voices. And the expression that I like to use is softening into your resistance. So I appreciate the experiences that there's resistance here, but if you can soften into that, there's all kinds of magic on the other side of that. Yeah. And you know, one of the big resistances that a lot of people have is that things are black and white. It's either A or it's B. It's either yes or it's no. And very often in life, it's yes and no. It's up and down. And so this whole idea of things being both and is a paradox that in the mind is just like the mind goes blah, 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 I can't understand that. But the body really gets that, because you can be elated and you can be exhausted at the same time. You can be sad and loving at the same time, and the logical mind just can't get that.
So that word paradox has been something I've really struggled and then embraced the last year or so as well. And I think Richard said on the last episode something like, you know, the more you see paradoxes, the more close to truth you are. I think you've said very similar sentiments to that to me as well the last few months. But yeah, that really does resonate as true. And I love when we started the coaching sessions, you gave that sort of whole setup and spiel that, you know, you're there to listen and sort of ask appropriate questions and to help me be accountable to myself, and that there might be times you ask a question or say something that I may not want to hear, and it was because you set it up so well, it was then always fine. But ultimately you were speaking, I now know, to that I'm going to face that resistance and I'm going to sometimes want to fight it. And so you even preempted that in the setup. But I think that was, I now see the value of that setup, that we said it earlier, it's not sexy, it can be pretty messy, and there are days you're like, damn, this embodiment archetype stuff, like, you know, I just want to be able to crack on like I did 10 years ago and feel amazing all the time, you know.
And you can feel amazing all the time, and if you listen to your body, you'll work out how to feel amazing
That's the point, isn't it? It enables you to feel good, but from a different place of that. You know, and when I reference, and you know, this is sort of a clarification for people watching, listening, that it's not like I'm speaking to some past where everything was coming from a wrong place, but it was youthful exuberance and like adventurous naivety. You know, it was like those types of things that they were all genuine, authentic, and awesome and amazing. But I started to learn they weren't all sustainable, because they weren't always coming from that pure place in me. Some parts of it was a bit about proving some element of, like, particularly speaking to disability, right? Like, it goes out saying that society definitely has weird stereotypes and tropes about disability. So it's understandable that you are looking to sort of show the world that just because I'm in a chair doesn't stop me, you know? But there's only so long that fuel lasts for. That does burn out. Whereas what we've done, I can still go off and travel and start businesses, do all the things I did, but it's coming from a much more sustainable source of energy as well.
Totally. Exactly. Beautifully put.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I have nothing.
Right. The reason I say I think we're kind of coming towards the end. There's so much more we could talk about, and I was toying with some sort of thing for people to go away and try and practice. And if you feel there is a particular thing, feel free to share it now. But what I will also do in the copy with this podcast is share a bit of, like, you know, sort of your Facebook. Well, I don't have the Facebook page is the most appropriate, but essentially, where can people find out about you, David, and your work? But if there's like one practice that you would recommend, we don't have to do it now, but I can tee it up in the copy that if they want to download something or, you know, go and watch something on YouTube, I can put that on after the episode as well, if you let me know.
Yeah, I can definitely, yeah, there are, just trying to think, yeah, there's definitely some stuff that I can send you through that would be, well, let's just do it now, shall we?
Let's do it now. Go on then.
Let's
Go on
do it
then.
now. Okay. So one of the things that people really resonate with a lot when I speak with people about the archetypes is this idea of being in your sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
We use it a lot about countries, right? That we're, you know, like the UK is a sovereign state, or Great Britain is a sovereign state. A sovereign state meaning that it has autonomy, that it can set its own rules, that it protects its borders. And psychologically, we can do the same, we can be the same. So what I'd like to invite you into is just doing a quick way of being able to access your sovereign. So should we do that together?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm all about the sovereignty.
You're all about the sovereignty. Great. So however you're sat, or however, if you'd like to stand, then you can do this standing, or if you can stand, then feel free to do that. And we can do this seated as well. To begin with, bring your attention to your feet. And allow your attention to move up through your body, up towards the knees, and then towards the pelvis. And allow your attention to come to your belly and your lower back, and your chest and your upper back. Be aware of your shoulders and your arms. And be aware of your head and your neck. Nothing to change, simply being aware. And with that awareness, you might feel that maybe you're a little bit uncomfortable, or you feel a little bit out of alignment. So make whatever adjustments you need to and can, so that you feel your weight evenly distributed on your seat or on your feet, that your shoulders are directly over your pelvis, and that your head is balanced on the top of your spine. And then relax the core muscles of the body, starting with the muscles in your forehead and around your eyes. Relax your jaw and your tongue. Relax your throat and your chest. And relax the muscles in your belly and your pelvis as best you can. And what you might experience is the weight of your body dropping down into your feet, into your seat, or into the floor. And that you might also experience feeling the floor pushing you back up. And if you don't feel that, then imagine it like you're connected to the ground and you can feel your spine lengthen, so that you're sitting or standing with a sense of dignity, a sense of stability, a sense of uprightness. And if you want to take this further with the imagination, you could imagine that you're wearing a crown. And you could imagine that you've got a cloak that hangs over your shoulders, that goes down to the floor and trails behind you, so that you have these symbols of sovereignty. And to take a moment to feel what that experience is like in your body. Does it feel familiar? Does it feel unfamiliar? What areas of your life would it benefit you if you lived those parts of your life in your sovereignty? what difference would it make? How would you show up differently? And then to wiggle your fingers and toes, have that move up through your body so that you can't come out of that exercise. And that is an invitation to practice that on a regular basis if you want to, and see the impact that it has and what a difference it makes.
Thank you for that, David.
And if anybody struggles with that, or anybody wants to know more about the archetypes or about coaching, you can reach out to me. So my website is www.potentialitycoaching. So that's potential, ITY, coaching. So potentialitycoaching.co.uk. You can reach out to me on email there. And I also have on Facebook, we have a Archetypes Academy Facebook group. So if you go onto Facebook and search Archetypes Academy, we have a Facebook group where we post videos, and we give free Facebook lives and free sessions and all kinds of lots of really, really great stuff around the archetypes. So all of that information, all the information about the archetype stuff is posted in that Facebook group. So they're the two best places to get hold of me and learn about what I'm doing.
Amazing. And I think when you said earlier about sort of the different archetypes over different cultures and different times, and I love them obviously very specifically to my personal situation with business and being a CEO the last couple of years, and the growth that I've been through in that role. And I know that when we've done same sort of exercises to the one you just kindly shared on the podcast, I come out of it with clarity. That there's maybe all sorts of there's all the clients and all the team and all the finance. I'm like carrying so much around. As much as I love my job and I know how well everything's going with Purple Coat, there can be a heaviness about leadership. And I've always referred to you as a sort of embodiment coach and leadership coach, because the big thing that I've been grappling with is how to lead in a different way from how I did the last 10 years. And we didn't sort of get into career specifically. I think it's been most relevant doing it as we've done today. But ultimately, I come out and I'm like, okay, I now know what to do. It's like a knowing. I don't have to like overthink and write a million to-do lists. It's like, okay, that stillness has given me clarity on what needs to be done in the next hour, the next day, the next week. And so, yeah, just I guess a tangible example of my experience of how that exercise you've just walked us through can be applied to a particular parts of life. But of course, everyone's going to have their applications and their other parts of life that it will maybe be more useful for as well.
Yeah. And at the risk of preempting you when you ask me, have you got a parting message that you'd like to share?
Oh, how did you know?
Almost every podcast. I'd just like to point to something that you just said, which is that with that exercise, your experience of it is that the answer lies within.
Thank you. Yeah.
The answer lies within for everybody.
Yeah.
Even if the answer is go and find out more information from somebody else.
Yeah.
That answer comes from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is always the case. So, that I can't stress how important that bit is, because
and that's really important about how you said it might be go and find info or talk to someone else. Like, it doesn't mean every answer is then you personally having to be all knowing and all doing. It's essentially that kind of keeping things moving forward and momentum and all that kind of other stuff. We could definitely go off into some other tangents here because I'm thinking about Radical Wholeness now, which was a
Oh,
phenomenal book that you recommended that I love reading last year. But yeah, I think ultimately that was a great other point, is that the answers don't always mean you doing it all. It's just then knowing what the next step is, and it's always what next step to take in life, right?
yeah. No, not always
No.
what the next step is. Sometimes it's about sensing into what is present.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's reflection and contemplation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess step was a bit action oriented,
yeah,
but like knowing what the next moment of your being could be, whether it's write an email, which would be a very doing step, or I'm going to meditate or have a nap or lie under a tree on a summer's day.
yeah, or having an insight about something that was previously really puzzling or confusing to you.
Yeah. And we didn't get into doing and being either. So,
Get into
but we're definitely going to have
another
another.
episode.
Yeah, I think definitely another episode for sure. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's been phenomenal that we can speak to, I guess, the personal journeys we've had that you know brought us to I guess benefiting from embodiment and archetypes one way or another, but also the relationship we've built up, the friendship and the coaching that we do. I'm just so happy we could get together and share that with the world, most of all, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then whatever anyone watching or listening has learned, or had an insight or some kind of inspiration, is phenomenal as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, let's definitely do it again sometime sooner than later. Is there anything else you'd like to say, David?
I knew you were going to say that. No, seriously, I feel for anybody that wants to know more, to explore more, is curious, just, please reach out. I like to be generous with my time. I like to be generous with my space. And it feels more important to me that, people feel free and open to ask the questions that are most burning for them. So don't be shy about reaching out if you have questions that you want to ask or things that you want to explore.
Amazing. Cool.
Thanks for the
Well, no, thank you. Pleasure as always, and everybody watching. I'll share some of the links and the information we've referenced with the copy. So everyone feel free to reach out to David to engage in some of the content and the ideas and philosophies we've talked about today. And thank you for listening and watching, and thank you very much again, David.
My pleasure. Thank you.